The rancher met his friend's mail-order bride, but fell for her sister instead. The summer sun hung low over the Wyoming plains, pouring its golden light across the wide-open ranchlands. Miles of grass swayed under the breeze, broken only by fences, herds of cattle, and the occasional dust rising from a horse's hooves. To Luke Carver, this land wasn't just where he worked, it was who he was. Every dawn, every ride out into the pastures, every evening spent under the wide western sky reminded him he belonged to this soil. That morning, however, Luke was restless. His best friend, Henry McGraw, had written weeks ago with news that his long-awaited mail-order bride was finally arriving on the train from St. Louis. Henry, who had been widowed young and left with no children, had decided it was time to marry again. He'd placed an ad, exchanged letters, and struck an agreement with a young woman who promised to travel west and become his wife. Henry had asked Luke for a favor, to ride into town, meet the train, and bring the bride back to the McGraw ranch. Luke agreed without hesitation. He knew what it meant to be alone out here, with only the wind for company. A man could work hard from sunrise to dusk, but when the lamps were lit and the nights stretched long, loneliness pressed in. Henry wanted companionship again, and Luke respected him for it. Yet as Luke saddled his chestnut horse, a thought nagged at him. What sort of woman answered such ads? Brave, surely, to cross the country. Desperate, perhaps. Maybe both. He'd heard stories of mail-order brides who turned out to be nothing like their letters, some bringing more trouble than peace. Still, Henry was certain, and Luke would not dampen his hope. The ride into town took 2 hours, dust clinging to Luke's boots and hat as he pushed his horse at a steady trot. The small depot came into sight, its wooden platform bustling more than usual. The mid-morning train was due, and a handful of townsfolk had gathered, merchants waiting for deliveries, families expecting visitors, curious onlookers who always came when new faces stepped off the cars. Luke tied his horse to a post, adjusted his hat, and leaned against the rail. He kept his eyes on the horizon until at last a whistle pierced the air. The ground trembled faintly as the black engine rolled into the station, steaming and hissing, slowing to a halt. The doors opened. Passengers spilled out, men in suits, women clutching children, a pair of travelers carrying trunks. Then he saw her. A young woman in a pale blue dress stepped onto the platform. She carried herself with a nervous grace, her gloved hands clutching a small satchel. Her hair, the color of wheat in sunlight, was neatly pinned beneath a modest bonnet. Her eyes swept the crowd, searching. There was something about the tilt of her chin, the mix of hope and fear in her expression, that tugged at Luke unexpectedly. She must be Henry's bride. Luke straightened, tipping his hat as he approached. "Ma'am, are you by chance Miss Eleanor Walker?" The woman turned, relief flickering in her eyes. "Yes." "Eleanor Walker. You must be Mr. Carver." "I am." "Luke Carver, Henry's friend. He sent me to fetch you." She let out a soft breath, her shoulders easing. "Oh, thank goodness. I was worried no one would be here." Luke offered his arm, which she accepted. "Welcome to Wyoming, Miss Walker." As he led her toward the wagon hitched nearby, he noticed another figure descending the steps behind her, a young woman, perhaps a few years younger, carrying a trunk almost too heavy for her slender frame. "Hold on there," Luke said quickly, striding back. He lifted the trunk with ease and set it on the platform. "Let me take that for you, miss." The girl laughed lightly, brushing a strand of dark hair from her face. Her eyes, deep brown and full of mischief, met his. "Thank you kindly, sir. I was starting to think I'd have to drag it all the way by myself." Luke blinked, momentarily thrown. "And you are?" "Clara Walker," she said. "Eleanor's sister. I came along to keep her company on the journey." Luke looked from one sister to the other. Eleanor stood composed, a quiet dignity about her. Clara, by contrast, radiated energy, her smile quick, her words easy. Two sisters, alike in grace but strikingly different in spirit. "Well then," Luke said slowly, "I reckon Henry wasn't expectin' two of you." Clara winked. "Don't worry, I'm not here to steal her groom." Just here to see the West before I go back home. Who knows, maybe I'll even learn to ride a horse." Luke chuckled, though something in his chest stirred as her laughter rang out. He pushed the thought aside. His duty was clear: deliver Henry's bride safely. The ride back to the ranch stretched across miles of open country. Eleanor sat quietly in the wagon seat beside Luke, her hands folded in her lap. Clara, perched on the back of the wagon among the trunks, filled the air with chatter, commenting on the endless sky, the rugged hills, the freedom she felt already. Luke found himself glancing back at her more than once, drawn to the sparkle in her eyes. Each time, he scolded himself. She wasn't the bride. Eleanor was. And Henry deserved his happiness. By the time they reached the McGraw ranch, the sun was dipping lower. Henry himself came striding out from the barn, his broad face breaking into a smile when he saw Eleanor. "Miss Walker," he said warmly, taking her hands. "I'm mighty glad you came. Welcome." Eleanor smiled, a touch of color rising in her cheeks. "Thank you, Mr. McGraw." Clara hopped down from the wagon, dusting her skirts. "Don't forget me. I'm Clara, Eleanor's shadow on this adventure." Henry laughed, a bit surprised but gracious. "Well, Miss Clara, you're welcome too. Any sister of Eleanor's is a guest here." As the evening settled, Luke excused himself, riding back toward his own ranch. Yet his thoughts betrayed him. Though Eleanor was everything Henry could want, gentle, polite, willing, Luke's mind kept drifting to Clara. Her laughter, her boldness, the way she looked at the world as if it were a grand adventure waiting to be lived. It was wrong. He knew it. But deep in his chest, a spark had been lit. And sparks, on these dry plains, had a way of turning into fire. The next morning dawned crisp and clear, the smell of dew still clinging to the grass. Luke saddled his horse, but his mind wasn't on the cattle waiting in the east pasture. All night he had tossed and turned, haunted not by Eleanor, the bride meant for his friend, but by Clara, her sister. It wasn't right. He owed Henry too much. They had worked side by side for years, helping each other through drought, storms, and lean seasons. Henry had trusted him with the most delicate of favors, to escort his bride. And Luke had done it. Yet something about Clara's presence stirred him in a way he couldn't deny. He tried to put her out of his mind as he rode his morning rounds. But when noon came and he passed near the McGraw ranch, fate betrayed him. Clara was outside, gathering wildflowers along the fence line, her skirts brushing the tall grass. She waved when she saw him. "Mr. Carver," she called brightly, "do you always ride past here this early?" Luke pulled up his horse, tipping his hat. "Not always. But sometimes the cattle wander this way." She came nearer, holding a bundle of yellow blooms. "Well, I'm glad they did today. Wyoming feels so big and empty. It's nice to see a familiar face." He dismounted slowly, unsure whether it was wise. "You'll get used to the wide open spaces. Takes time." Clara tilted her head, her brown eyes sparkling. "I don't know if I want to get used to it. Back home, everything felt crowded. Here, it's like I can breathe." Luke found himself smiling despite himself. "You sound like someone meant to live out here." Her laughter rang out, low and easy. "Maybe I am. Or maybe I'm just chasing adventure while I can." Their gazes held a moment too long. Luke cleared his throat and stepped back, forcing the air between them. "I should be getting on. Henry will expect you and your sister to be settling in." Clara nodded, but there was a flicker in her eyes, a hint she'd noticed his hesitation, his guardedness. Weeks passed. Life on the ranches fell into rhythm. Eleanor adjusted quickly, proving herself capable in Henry's household. She cooked, kept the house tidy, and spoke softly of her gratitude for a fresh start. Henry looked at her with growing fondness, though he was still a careful man, as if afraid to hope too much. Clara, on the other hand, could not be contained within walls. She rode out often, sometimes with Henry's permission, sometimes without. She helped mend fences, learned to saddle a horse, even tried her hand at roping. Wherever Clara was, laughter followed. And more often than not, Luke found himself there too. At first, it was chance, their paths crossing near the creek or while driving cattle. Then it became something else. Clara would seek him out with some excuse, a question about riding, a request to see the herd. And Luke, though torn by guilt, could not bring himself to turn her away. They talked for hours, sometimes about nothing at all. Clara confessed her dreams of seeing the world, while Luke admitted he had never dreamed beyond the boundaries of his land. He admired her boldness. She admired his steadiness. And slowly, against his will, Luke realized he was falling in love. The conflict. One evening, a storm rolled over the plains. The wind howled, rattling windows, lightning flashing across the horizon. Luke had taken shelter at the McGraw Ranch, unable to ride home. After supper, Eleanor excused herself early, weary from the day's work. Henry busied himself in the barn, checking the animals. That left Luke and Clara by the fire, the storm crackling outside. Clara turned toward him, her face lit by the flames. "Luke, may I ask you something?" He shifted uneasily. "Go ahead. Do you ever feel trapped by duty? Like you're expected to be one thing, but your heart pulls you toward something else?" The question struck too close. Luke stared into the fire. "All the time," he admitted quietly. Clara's hand brushed his, just for a moment, sending a jolt through him. "I shouldn't say this," she whispered, "but it isn't Henry the first look for when I ride out. It's you." Luke's heart pounded. Every fiber of him wanted to pull her close, to claim what he already knew he wanted. But he forced himself to stand, putting distance between them. "Clara," he said roughly, "this ain't right. Your sister is promised to Henry. He's my friend. I won't betray him." Her eyes glistened, hurt but fierce. "And what about me? What about us?" Luke clenched his fists. "There is no us. There can't be." The storm outside raged on, but inside, the silence cut sharper than thunder. The twist. Days later, Henry called Luke aside. They stood near the barn, the smell of hay thick in the air. Henry's face was troubled. "Luke," he began slowly, "I need your counsel. It's Eleanor. She's a fine woman, but she don't look at me the way a bride ought to. She's polite, kind even, but distant. I think maybe her heart wasn't in this bargain after all." Luke's chest tightened. "What are you sayin'?" Henry sighed. "I think she only agreed to come west because Clara insisted on travelin'. I've seen the way Eleanor looks, like she's here out of duty. But Clara, she shines here. Like the land itself welcomes her." Luke froze. Could it be Henry saw it too? Henry gave a short laugh, weary but not bitter. "Truth is, I think I've been courtin' the wrong sister. And maybe that's why things feel off." Luke swallowed hard. "And what will you do?" Henry shrugged. "Talk to Eleanor. See what she truly wants. If her heart ain't with me, I won't chain her here. I've been lonely a long time, Luke, but I'd rather stay that way than hold a woman against her will." Resolution. That evening, under the fading light, Henry spoke with Eleanor. Luke wasn't there to hear the words, but he saw the aftermath, Eleanor's tears, Henry's gentle hand on her shoulder, the quiet understanding between them. By the next morning, it was settled. Eleanor admitted she had agreed to the arrangement mostly for Clara's sake, never fully believing she could love again so far from home. Henry, though saddened, accepted it with grace. Clara, meanwhile, stood apart, uncertain. Luke found her by the corral, her hands gripping the rail. "You heard?" he asked softly. She nodded. "I never wanted to hurt Henry. Or Eleanor. But Luke, I can't pretend any more." He stepped closer, taking her hands. "Neither can I." For a moment, they simply breathed together, the weight of weeks of silence lifting. Then, without hesitation, Luke kissed her, gentle at first, then deeper, as if all the storms of the plains had gathered in that one moment. When they parted, Clara smiled through her tears. So what now? Luke chuckled, resting his forehead against hers. Now, we let the land decide. We'll build a life if you'll have me. And maybe, this time, it'll be the right sister. Clara laughed, her joy echoing across the wide Wyoming sky. And in that sound, Luke knew the truth. He had found not just love, but the missing piece of himself.